Hi, I'm Steve Nathan, Rabbi Steve Nathan, and I am uh, rabbinic presence on a regular basis. And I'm Haskalah, though I'm not officially the rabbi here. Welcome, everyone. So the title, I think the title was Spiritually Preparing Yourself for the Yamim Noraim, the High Holy Days, something along those lines. And, I have a whole bunch of texts about, the rules and the prayers and all that, but I wanted to focus more on what is the meaning of the holidays? What are the meanings and how can we find a spiritual connection? Before we even get into the texts, would somebody like to share something about the Yamim Noraim, about the High Holy Days that you find meaningful, spiritually meaningful, whatever spiritually means different things to different people, but either a ritual or just something about the holidays that you find particularly meaningful spiritually?
I can go. I'm Maria Isabel. I'm from Cambridge, Massachusetts. By day, I work in fundraising and development. I'm a member of the leadership council at my synagogue. And what I find most meaningful is the opportunity for real reflection. That time it takes between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where you have those days of awe to really sit and reflect and look at who you are and look at what you'd like your new year to be, and how you'd like to present yourself to the world, to your friends, to your community, family, during the new year.
Thank you. So that time for reflection, especially during the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 days in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Anybody else like to share?
I would second, this is Rebecca, I would second the time for reflection. I also have always enjoyed the Tashlich process.
Mm-hmm.
It's very.
What do you like about
it? I like being able to have that very private, personal time to reflect and let go of things that might need to be let go of from the past year or whenever.
Okay, great. What else? Anybody else?
I was going to say Tashlich too. In particular, I find that one point of focusing of the reflection. You've taken these 10 days and everything, and hopefully if you have time, the month in advance, but to take that one moment and identify, this no longer serves me and it's time for it to go. And really making that decisive, I'm making a change in my life and who I am kind of moment.
Right.
And Joey threw out, for him, it's hearing the shofar blow. And early in his conversion, he was struggling with being overwhelmed by loud sounds. And so it hurt to hear it first. But now it's that spiritual wake up.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That is cool. That is cool. Is there anybody else who wants to share? So
I always think about how to be a better person before the high holidays.
Okay. So I want to try and address those four things because I would feel like that's a good place to start. Actually, I'll start with Daniela, your comment about becoming a better person. That phrasing is always interesting to me. Because I don't remember where I was talking about this the other day. Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun, who I consider a rabbi of mine, an American Buddhist nun. She's amazing. And I remember one point she talks about, meditation, spiritual practice of making you a better person can imply that you're not a good person already. So yes, I totally get what you're getting, but I think it's important for us to remember that we're not starting from this place of, some people are, and some people in the tradition do, but those aren't the traditions I connect to. Not starting from the place where I am not worthy. I'm, Judaism believes that our soul is pure and that, we, through our actions, it gets a little schmutzy, for lack of a better term. But, right, so there is that idea of bettering ourselves and preparing ourselves. And as Liz was saying, sort of thinking about what are the things that don't serve me anymore? What are the things that I've done over this past year or years? Because they maybe things have been happening for years. Often they are that, don't serve me and don't serve the betterment of the world, the betterment of our community. There's this saying, the ancient rabbis had this saying about arguments, that if it's an argument l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven or for the sake of the greater good, then it was a valid argument. If it was just about ego, then no. And I think that can be applied to teshuva as well. If it's just about stroking your ego and making oneself feel better, but it's not really about serving the greater good for oneself, for one's community, and for the world, then is it really doing tshuva? Tshuva isn't just repentance. It's, that's the English term, and translation is always inaccurate, but it is about returning. So what are you returning to? You're not, hopefully not returning back to the old patterns that are detrimental or destructive. Hopefully you're turning back to closer to where we started, that with that clean slate, that pure soul. And the other piece of that is, we may, as we all do, I think, most likely, say we're gonna, get rid of these things, we're gonna throw them in the water, and darn if they don't come back again.
Little clingy.
Yeah. There used to be this children's song, "The cat came back the very next day." They keep trying to get rid of the cat. Yeah. And sometimes some of those sins, and sin really means missing the mark. It's not, yes, there are the really bad sins like murder, and those aren't the ones that we ask forgiveness for, even in our prayers. It's all the gossip and talebearing and not respecting others and things like that. The missing of the mark that I think we all participate in. So somehow those, like that cat, they come back, and then we can try our best to acknowledge them. The truth is, if you try and throw it away too much or try to beat it over, I don't want to use that analogy here, beat it over the head, but the sin, not the cat. That's not gonna, it's gonna pop back up again. Sometimes it's a matter of, and this is really a mindfulness practice of recognizing it. If you're going through a meditative process, whether it's tashlich or just sitting there and thinking about one's life, and these things pop up that we that we need to get rid of, just that are not serving us, to kind of sit with them and acknowledge them, and maybe respect that maybe they did serve a purpose at one time, or we thought they did, and then to sort of gently send them on their way. So it's, again, easier said than done. So so I think that's all going back to starting, not always, when we're saying being a better person, it's not implying that we're bad people to begin with. It's just implying that we want to be better than the good that we hopefully already are.
We've drifted from center.
Yeah, exactly, drifted from center. And some, tashlich is one of those practices that, it does give us the opportunity to really physically symbolize. I mean, let's face it, we don't have to throw whatever it is that we throw, because you're not supposed to throw bread, because it's bad for the fish, into the water. But, we can do it's just a matter of going through the list and saying, okay, I'm tossing them away. It can just be an imaginary tossing, or just in our mind, but taking that time to look at the things, and Of course, as I think we all probably know, we all have to remember that if our missing of the mark affected other people, that forgiving ourselves is not enough. Often that's where we need to start, because it's hard to ask for forgiveness if you haven't forgiven yourself. It's not only about being sorry, but it's about actually forgiving yourself. You know, I can be sorry for something that I did that was wrong, but I'm really sorry that I did it, but I really haven't forgiven myself for doing it, right?
Do you have to forgive yourself before you make the amends, or can you only forgive yourself after you made the amends?
Okay, so do you have to forgive yourself first, or do you forgive yourself afterwards? Yes. I think it differs. It differs. Sometimes we just can't make the amends we need to without forgiving ourselves first, right? And other times we can't forgive ourselves until we make the amends. But it should always be with the intention of then forgiving yourself, not hanging on to it. And that's the essential piece, that we're casting it away. And how we're doing that is different for each of us. And I know Joey spoke about the shofar, and I think for me also, that's always been one of the most powerful images, symbols, rituals, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is why, you know, it's interesting, because traditionally, if Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat, you're not supposed to sound the shofar. And there are various reasons for that, including the one that you might accidentally carry it on Shabbat when you're not supposed to, or break other rules. But my feeling is, for so many people, that's the one day they come. And to take that opportunity away from them, especially when, I'll speak about our community, we use electricity, we drive to synagogue, we do everything, all these other things that you're not supposed to do on Shabbat. We use the video, the Zoom, and yet all of a sudden when it comes to the shofar, oh, you can't do that on Shabbat. And yet there's some people that really want to hang on to that, and I want to respect that. And I think it's important to respect it. Luckily, we don't have to deal with it this year. But, you know, what I've always done, because I do think it is such a powerful symbol, is, okay, if Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat, have the shofar service after we finished everything else. After Adon Olam or Yigdal or whatever you use to end the service, say those who would like to stay, we will have a shofar service now. If you are not comfortable with shofar on Shabbat, then please leave. And I feel like that's a compromise. But you know, I didn't bring all of these texts, I don't think. Maimonides, a special, talks about, you know, the shofar as a wake-up call. And it's not just saying, I should have brought I don't know how many people have ever seen the clip of Mayim Bialik and Max Greenberg, the actor, on what's his name, the British guy, the Late Show, James Corden. Yeah. Talking about the shofar, and Mayim Bialik is talking about how much maybe we'll show this at the end, but they go into this whole riff about, oh my God, the shofar, and then you're holding your breath to see Tekiah Gedolah, and she's like, how long can you go? And yeah, as a kid especially, and even now when I do it, it's like, okay, how long can I hold my breath? But that's not obviously what it's about. It's not a ritual to see how long you can hold your breath while sounding a ram horn. So it is that wake-up call, and Maimonides has a whole list of things. If you just look up Maimonides' laws for sounding the shofar, he has all of those. But for me, one of the most spiritually moving stories about shofar, excuse me one second, is from Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, alav shalom, of blessed memory, one of the great American rabbis in Boston, mid to late 20th century. And he tells this story. There's this idea that Maimonides talks about, of hir hura teshuvah, that the shofar wakens us up, right? Wakes us up, awakens us, and helps us to get out of where we are and realize where we really are. And he tells the story of his wife had been very ill with, I think it was cancer, for a very long time, and she slept in a separate room because she was often up during the night and coughing, and she didn't want to keep him up, and she wanted to, I think probably for herself too, it was probably more comfortable being in her own bed, but he would always go in and check on her during the night whenever he happened to wake up. And this went on for a good period of time, and then she died. And sometime after that, he woke up in the middle of the night and was sort of in a daze, not realizing what was real, what wasn't, where he was, where he wasn't. And he went into his wife's room and she wasn't there. And he freaked out, like, oh my God, where, the way he tells the story is much more powerful. I was wondering, where did she go? What happened to her? Is she hurt? And then all of a sudden he stops. And he realizes the reality of the situation is that his wife is no longer alive. And that sense of the shofar of awakening us to the reality of the moment, that somehow so often we're caught in imagining what the moment is, or being in the past, or thinking about the future, without using the actual way I heard it. But if you stand there with one foot in the future, 1 foot in the past, you're blanking on the present. I'll just leave it at that. And so the shofar wakes us up, is meant to wake us up to the reality of the moment. And as with so many things in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's not necessarily pleasant. I mean, it was not pleasant when he realized the truth of the matter. I'm sure it was devastating on so many different levels. And often when we really look at what it is, that is no longer serving us, what we've done to hurt ourselves, what we've done to harm our others, our community, our family, our friends, our loved ones, it's very painful. And our society, by the way, I'm kind of going on a riff here based on your comments, so if you want to jump in with a comment or a question, please just throw it in the chat, and Liz can say, hey, hold on a second, because I'm great at riffing. But this idea that there's so much going on, and we can't. Our society is, again, this is Pema Chodron is wonderful talking about this, but other spiritual teachers as well, that she's talking specifically about meditation, and this idea that with meditation and with prayer and all of spiritual practice, you're going higher and higher and higher and above everything else. And she's like, actually, no, you're going lower and lower and lower first. You're getting down in the muck of the reality, down in the messiness of life, so that then you can come up. And there's actually this concept in rabbinic Judaism of Yerida Tzorchei Aliyah, you go down in order to go up.
Like a seed.
Yeah, like a seed, right, exactly. Because we're not all going to make it to the top of the mountain, and that's not the goal. The goal of the mountain, the goal of us is to be wherever we are on the mountain. I mean, when God speaks to Moses, when God tells Moses to go to the mountain, and God says, go to the mountain and be there. Well, the be there is kind of superfluous. But I can't remember where the commentary is, but I know I first read it from Lawrence Kushner. The idea is that, yeah, you can be there and not really be there, right?
And the idea that every Jew was there,
right,
present, future, all of us
exactly
were there.
Exactly, and that's really powerful. I mean, when you think about ancient religions, I'm reading the sort of classic book, James Michener's The Source, which talks about the origins of Judaism in Israel. It's a fascinating book. I haven't read it in years. And he's talking about sort of the development of Judaism, and the fact that the fact that we don't have a pope, we don't have an archbishop, we don't have whatever name we are all on the same level. And that's partly because we were all present at Sinai. According to tradition. And again, Sinai, if you think it was real, if you think it was mythological, well, mythological is real too. If you think it was a historical fact or not, doesn't matter. What matters is the teaching that we were all present there. And also, this is also really important in our tradition that, you don't have to be born a Jew in order to, once you're a Jew, it's like all of a sudden, it sort of reminds me of, there's certain chat programs, like we use GroupMe at Lehigh for the students. And the minute you sign on to GroupMe, you can see all the texts from before. So it's like you're in the conversation. So this is the GroupMe of spirituality. It's like you get in, once you become Jewish, you're in that conversation. And if you leave Judaism for whatever reason, you're actually still in that conversation. You might have it on mute, but you can still get back in really easily. So, I think that's really, the importance of being there as we were all there. And as, when we're there together, I know people, my sister's one of them, who doesn't find meaning going to synagogue. She likes to go out and do things in nature on her own, and that's fine. I'm not, I never berate her for it. But there is a power of being alone in a crowd, in the sense of at services. It's not, the sense of somebody who feels alone in a crowd because they're not a part of it, but you can be alone and in a crowd at the same time. You're doing your individual work, but you've got the support of the community. And I think it was also Rabbi Soloveitchik who sort of likened it to a mikveh, the ritual bath. You immerse yourself in that as an individual in the mikveh, and you come out of it a spiritually renewed person. And he sees the congregation as kind of like a spiritual mikveh, that we immerse ourselves in that mikveh, that we are in the congregation, and yet we are also alone at the same time, doing the work that we need to do, and so is everybody else. So I think that's important. So it's not just rote reciting prayers or going to be seen. I remember when I was a kid, it was like everybody dressing up and say who's wearing what, and who's fine. I have no problem if you want to dress up nicely for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, but if you want to come in shorts, shoes, and shorts, a t-shirt, and sandals, that's fine too. So this idea of it really is about being there, being present in the moment as individuals in a community. But right now, stepping back, we're in Elul, the month before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And even though there are prayer services and you can go to them, a lot of the work that takes place during Elul is very personal, looking over all of those different things. Is there a comment or question?
Yeah, Maria was saying that it was an interesting analogy, and water is a symbol of purity and cleansing. I've also loved water as a metaphor for God.
Yeah. So in this case, water can be the people, the water can be God, or they're the same thing.
Yeah. Because
God is, how we connect to it. When we connect to our community, we're connecting to God or to the divine.
Martin Buber has entered the chat.
Martin Buber has entered. Right. So that we're having. Right. So with Buber talks about that in our relationships with the divine, there's two. There's the I-it, where we sort of see God in almost a utilitarian way, praying for, please do this for me, please do that. I would like rain now, please. I would like, right, as opposed to the I-thou or the I-you, which is actually that one-on-one, like we're looking God face to face, and having a relationship, and that means different things to different people.
And then when you do an I, thou, or I, you with another person, there's always that third party that
Mhm.
connect truly with another person is how you glimpse God. I
Right,
always love that little bit, there's divinity in every
yeah.
true relationship between people.
I have to bring at least one musical theater quote into everything, but
Yeah,
you
I'll
know,
check it out.
as if this isn't Sondheim, its name is Arab, you know, to see another person is to see the face of God. You know, it's not original to the musical, and I'm not sure if it was in the original book, but it's certainly that concept that's been floating around all over the many places for years. And it is true, you know, the eyes are the window to the soul is is the piece of God within us. So all of those things, but also feeling that being in community, even if you're not looking somebody in the eye, that you're still with them. I mean, I remember many years ago, I did a number of silent meditation retreats. That's an example of something that's not easy, but it has an amazing effect. But it wasn't like all of a sudden I was floating on air. It's like all of a sudden I was sitting on shpilkas, sitting on pins and needles, wanting to get up and talk. But this idea that in silence, the longer we were there together as a group, even though we never really talked to each other except at the beginning and the end, we were a community. And I felt, you know, when my eyes were closed and I was sitting there, I would feel the community. I would feel that connection to everybody else in the room very deeply, even though we weren't talking to each other. I think there's something about, you know, soul to soul that doesn't necessarily require words.
And Joey was saying, you know, important to remember, if you have a neurodivergent person, eye contact can be painful.
Mm-hmm.
But it's even just that, like, that presence of that sixth sense of knowing when there's another person in the room.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
somehow, like, your energy bumps up against their energy, and somehow you, by community, just being in that same room, even if you're not making eye contact or speaking.
And you know, that's true, Joey, and that just sort of hit me that as someone who also is neurodivergent, that I do find when I'm in conversations with people, I can only look them in the eye for so long. And then I start to get anxious and I have to look away, and then I can look back again. But and I used to think there was something wrong with me. And it's not that there's something wrong with me, it's just that my brain works a little differently. So yeah, but I can still be with someone without actually looking at them. And which is great when it comes to God, because we can't see God, right?
And sometimes that's all the person needs, is someone to sit next to them.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments on my I won't say ranting, riffing.
I'm sorry, Daniela was saying, to echo Joey's comment, you can absorb so much energy of other people in their presence. She's an empath, and it makes exhaustion comes afterwards, after being with somebody, and you can, there's definitely something there sensible that you can feel.
And also in terms of Elul, you know, it is about developing or reconnecting or improving. Improving is judgment, strengthening, refining, whatever you want, our relationship with the divine. The rabbi saw Elul as an acronym for Ani Ledodi V'Dodi Li. I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine, which is about our relationship with God. And so if we have that in our mind, that God is our beloved and we are God's beloved. Again, I know for some people that language might not work, but I think there's some version of that language that can work for everyone, if one is taking it as metaphor, as poetry, as mythological. So the Elul piece is, even though you can go to services and you sound the shofar every day during the month of Elul, traditionally, it is preparing, but a lot of the work that should go on during Elul is more personal.
You want this document?
Oh, so yeah, so first I wanted to, so I have two different documents. One is more about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, about Yamim Noraim in general. And then there's another one that's about, and then there's one about 5 things we can do to change our lives. And then, we're not going to get through everything, which is always the case.
I'm also putting the file in the chat if anybody wants to open it separately, if that's easier for you.
Yeah. And then there's the 27th Psalm, which is a spiritual practice. The recitation of that Psalm takes place from the beginning of Elul through the end of not just the Yamim Noraim, but also through the end of Sukkot. And some choices about, some possible practices for using Psalm 27 as a spiritual practice. And then I have another doc that Liz will also share in a little while later, which is just some ideas from a synagogue that I know of about ideas for Elul. So I want to, you can't see me scrolling, right?
Nope.
No,
you are
okay,
not
good.
affected.
Okay, yeah, because I should. Okay. So the beginning, this first one is by Rabbi Irving Yitz Greenberg, who was the founder of Klal, which is a trans-denominational group, interdenominational group within Judaism. He's an Orthodox rabbi himself, but he's very much about the transcending denominations and all of us being together. So would somebody like to read that? You can read all or part of that first passage that goes down to Rabbi Irving Greenberg in parentheses. It's a few paragraphs.
On Rosh Hashanah, Jews proclaim that God is creator and ruler of the universe. But while Rosh Hashanah celebrates cosmic creation, its central message is addressed to the individual. You are not fixed by your past. Through creation, the world came into being. It has a beginning and an end. The individual also has a beginning and an end. In the dramatic imagery of the high holy days, each person is on trial for his or her life in this period. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. Who shall live and who shall die? Facing death, would you live your life the same way? Or would you be more considerate and loving, more ethical, more adventurous, more creative? Most people live as if they cannot change. Past habits control us. Each person is trapped by standing obligations or pigeonholed by past career performances. We believe that once we have done wrong, we cannot ever remove that stain of guilt. The Torah claims otherwise. See, I place before you today, life and every day, life and good and death and evil. You can choose life. By strict justice, every sinner must be punished. Once done, a wrong can never be wiped out. By the miracle of God's love, however, the past can be erased. Even evil can be left behind. Repentance goes beyond guilt or sin. As Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik has pointed out, the basis of repentance is that human beings are capable of recreating themselves continually. If we stop growing, if we are prisoners of our past behavior, then we are truly dead in life. Becoming aware of bad or unsatisfactory behaviors is the first step to coming alive. The month before Rosh Hashanah and the 10 days of repentance from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur are set aside for this purpose in Jewish tradition. Our subsequent decisions to change and to create new living patterns add up to choosing life.
Yeah, stop there. Thoughts, reactions, questions?
It's wonderful. It's great. I especially like the very beginning. If you can scroll back there, right there. Or would you can choose facing death. Would you live your life the same way? Or would you be more considerate and loving, more ethical, more adventurous, more creative? we do live in habits. I do. I live in a habit of fear and I hate it, but I do. And it really is limiting, especially since COVID. And
Yeah,
you know, Rabbi Nathan, how
yeah,
isolating I am wearing the only one in shul wearing my mask and son.
yeah. You're
But
protecting yourself, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
that's
Uh,
really wonderful. Most people live their life as if they cannot change. Habits control us.
mhm.
So are you saying not only is Rosh Hashanah and hearing the shofar reminders, but also stimuli to help us make these changes and being in community?
Yes, I mean, that's what I think I'm saying, and they're saying, the various, Yitz Greenberg and Soloveitchik, and I think everybody's saying. And I think also what I really like about this is I think one of the most difficult pieces of liturgy for me through the years and for many people is that whole idea of who shall live and who shall die. And that's written on Rosh Hashanah and closed on Yom Kippur, the finality of it. And, was it ever meant to be taken literally? I don't think so. But it's reminding us that, even that during this time is the intense time to realize, how are we going to live our lives? How are we going to change it? That we're not, it's funny, the first time I read this, I thought you cannot fix your past. It's like, oh no, you are not fixed by your past. Very, very different meaning there. And so, we have this intense period to that's why you traditionally wear a kittel, wear white, which is what you're buried in. It's as if you're facing death. And yes, Judaism teaches elsewhere, live each day as if it is your last. But this is even more so intense, but it's not a fatalistic or negative way of looking at it. It's again sort of that wake up, like you don't know what the next moment is going to bring, right? A couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine who I've known for years, who just was seemingly in fine health, gone. So you really don't know. So in some way, every day is like a little Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, but this is the big one.
Yeah. Marie was saying, by setting down what doesn't serve your soul, you're making a conscious decision to live more life. And that makes perfect sense. Like, it's almost like anything that doesn't serve you inhibits you in some fashion. So why carry what we don't have to? And why keep making, if we know something's a mistake and we see it, we have to try to not do it again.
Right. Right.
That's on us. Otherwise, if we see that we make these errors and we continue on that path, that's on us. So take that moment to stop and look. And for me, I like the phrase here where it was, because I have to move my windows here. We believe that once we've done wrong, we cannot ever remove that stain of guilt. But you can.
If that were
You
true,
can change.
If that were true, what a waste our lives would be.
Yeah.
Right? Or how impossible our lives would be. If we stop growing, if we're prisoners of our past, then we're truly dead in life, as he says. The other thing, though, I do want to bring in, this, he wrote this a while ago, is there are certain things that are maybe not totally beyond our control to get rid of, but that are always going to be with us. And I'm thinking of, okay, so I think I think everybody lives with some form of PTSD or PTSS, post-traumatic stress syndrome, not disorder. I think that is really the term that's being used more, because we all have trauma in our lives, right? Even if, and this thing popped up on Instagram the other day, take this test and see if you had trauma as a child. It's like, I don't need to know that I had trauma as a child. I can name some of it, it's a gimmick. But Yeah, it's like, see if you have trauma and then we can fix you, right? We know where that's going. But the important thing to remember, and again, he didn't know this, we know, and I'm not a scientist, I just know a little bit of what I've read, is that intergenerational trauma exists. That it affects not only the ones who go through the trauma, but that it actually alters our DNA. So thinking of whether it's the trauma of the Shoah, name it, in our past, that in our people's past, whatever people that might be, that somehow that has altered our DNA. And so there are some things that, if we find certain things more difficult to get rid of, it might be because, I'm not saying, and again, I'm not an expert on this, that we can't get rid of them, but it becomes more difficult because obviously, just like if a physical illness is within our DNA, or within our genes in some way, that you can do what you can to prevent it from affecting your lives, but sometimes it's still going to, no matter what we do. I'm thinking of people who have certain illnesses, people have cancer that runs in the family. You can do all the things that you need to do to keep healthy and and you might still get cancer. But hopefully the fact that you've been doing all these other things beforehand will make it, again, I haven't gone through this, so I'm trying not to speak out of turn here, but hopefully the fact that you've been doing things to keep yourself healthy otherwise will enable you to face the cancer or face whatever it is, starting from a better place physically. So spiritually, the same thing. But if you don't know that you're carrying that trauma around with you,
someone once commented to me, a person can have PTSD from some horrible thing that happened in their life. But
right.
Each of us, no matter what our life held, have a worse thing that happened to us. It could be this big, but every person on the planet has a worst thing that ever happened to them. Because you can't not. If two things happen to you, one of them's worse. So we don't have to have that scale of mine's bigger than yours.
Right.
But we can each, it's just acknowledging that data point in your life and how it affects you. And Joey's saying secondary trauma from seeing others go through trauma. Is absolutely true.
Yes. Or even, again, I haven't been through this, but I'm thinking, okay, before I was saying that once you become a Jew, you're a Jew and you inherit all of the past and
welcome to heartburn.
But also it's interesting, and I don't know, when you become part of the Jewish people, in some way, I think you do inherit that trauma as well, even if it's not ingrained in our literal physical DNA. It is now ingrained in our spiritual DNA, so it's still there. So people who become Jewish, who choose to be Jewish, it's not like, oh well, I wasn't, so I don't need to think about the Holocaust because none of my ancestors actually lived through it. It's like, no, you're now part of it's in your spiritual DNA now. So again, there are certain things that we carry with us that are harder to get rid of, or we may never be able to get rid of, but if we're doing it in community and we recognize that we can hopefully, this is a time of self-reflection that we can think about how do we address those things in our lives. And then the next paragraph, which is about Yom Kippur, which is by Rabbi Erwin Kula. Also, I don't know if he's still working for Klal. This was on my computer from a while ago. Talking about, somebody want to read that paragraph then on Yom Kippur? Anybody online want to read?
Yeah, you're free to unmute at any time.
I can read it.
Okay, thanks, Daniela.
Then on Yom Kippur, we experience the giving of the second tablets. In reenacting this historical drama, we feel the unbounded optimism of Judaism. However far we think we have to go in our lives to restore wholeness, however distant we feel from the goal of renewal, we need only recall where we started, worshipping a golden calf, and where we are, receiving a second set of tablets. This is the message of Yom Kippur. We can return. There is a way home. No wonder the rabbis claim there was no more joyful day on the calendar than Yom Kippur. Sorry for my accent.
Oh,
Oh, no,
please.
don't ever apologize for that.
So this idea that Yom Kippur in some way is joyful because of hopefully where we end up on it. And why is he bringing in the second tablets here? Anybody know?
They were broken after that we were found with the calf, right?
Right,
So it was kind of a redemption
right,
of, okay, you've come far enough to now deserve this again.
right. That's part of it. Anybody else? So the rabbis have this wonderful midrash or belief that the golden calf and the breaking of the first set of tablets took place on Tisha B'Av, the day when the two temples were destroyed, the day of mourning. But the first mourning was mourning, was after the destruction of after the golden calf and the breaking of the first set of tablets. And when did Moses get the second set of tablets? Take a guess. Think of what we were just reading. Yom Kippur.
Oh, okay.
Yom Kippur, right?
Yeah.
So Yom Kippur is, and we'll read a little bit in a moment by Alan Liu, who's
Mr. Elul.
yeah, he's amazing. His book, This Is Real and I'm Completely Unprepared, as a spiritual preparation for the holidays. I highly recommend that to everyone. I need to reread it. I need to find my copy or get a new one. But so he really talks about this idea of the journey from Tisha B'Av. Actually, he goes all the way through Sukkot, through the rebuilding of the temple, that we rebuild our own temple and that the Sukkah represents that. But this idea that again, that trauma is in our DNA. Was there ever a golden calf? Were there ever a first set of tablets that got smashed? I don't know. And you know what? I don't care. What matters, I didn't mean to brush it aside so flippantly, but what matters is what is the meaning of this story and what does it represent? And it represents the utter destruction of what the people thought at that time was, the center of their spiritual life. It's also reminding them that, coming out of Egypt, a golden calf is just a golden calf. It's not a god, right? It's not God, because it was meant to represent God as we know God, but they felt they needed a physical representation. So that somehow spiritually, I think as we're going through this process to think about, okay, what have we lost and how can we rebuild it? How can we rebuild our lives? Or what tablets do we need to smash, right? In this period. And the other thing that's, I think, fits into this imagery is, according to the Torah and the interpretation, who wrote the first set of tablets? Not Moses, God. God wrote it with God's own finger. Or if you watch the movie, the Charlton Heston, the fire comes down and makes it. But Moses had to write the second set. So what do you think that in this sort of paradigm of renewal and rebirth and smashing the tablets and renewing ourselves and getting the second set on Yom Kippur, what does it mean that the second set is written by Moses and not by God?
I've always said, working with different populations, not about me without me. So it's more, it's got to be in some ways more human and more focused for our experience because it's coming from one of us, I guess. It's all about that stopping and reframing of, this is not ideal. How do we change? And so you have second draft usually improves on the first.
Although here the words, well, were the words the same? That's a whole other question, because when they get repeated in Deuteronomy, there's some minor changes, but that's because, well, that's because there were different authors, but we won't go into that.
Maria is saying, perhaps it means God was empowering us to set down our own path for pursuing justice and a more meaningful life.
And the words and the impetus and the ability to do that still came from the divine. But Moses wrote it. We write it ourselves, right?
Rachel just said it makes us as a people more a part of the process.
Right.
It's us claiming our future destiny of this is, we will aim higher.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love that image. And I think one thing that we can think of as we're going through spiritual practice in preparation for Yom Kippur, whether it's meditation or writing, everybody has a different way of doing it. For some people, meditation works. For some people, journaling works. For some people, writing poetry works. For some people, just walking and thinking works. Or I'm thinking of the spiritual practice of Hitbodedut, which is a type of meditation developed by Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, where you go out in the nature and you talk to God. You literally just talk. You talk nonstop. You don't stop, and it has to be out loud. And that's, for some people that works. For other people, they'll think you're crazy, but still, it's worth trying. But whatever method it is that we use to prepare ourselves, that idea to know that we are rewriting our tablets, and yet they are new, and yet they are still the same in a certain way. Siona?
I think it's kind of like moving us from the child concept of the parent is handing us the guidelines to we have to take responsibility for ourselves. And as we were saying, as it says earlier in this document, and we are making the decisions to change our lives and how we're going to do it. It's up to us. We have responsibility. We're grown now.
Yeah, exactly.
Training wheels are off.
Yeah, which means we're gonna fall. As many as, I don't ride a bike anymore, but even when I did, occasionally, even though I've been riding it for a while, I'll still fall. I've been walking for a while, and occasionally I still trip and fall, right? So
see last winter.
Yeah, so that, if that's true. I broke my arm falling on the ice last winter. So I love this idea of being in this process, not just of the 9 days of, not 10 days, sorry. The 9 days is before Tisha B'Av, not just the 10 days of repentance, but the whole period from Tisha B'Av through then of needing to sort of break ourselves down in order to rebuild ourselves. And the truth is, when we rebuild ourselves, part of us is going to look just the same, and part's going to be different, right? Did the tablets look exactly the same from a distance? Yeah, but then I'm sure you would have recognized the difference in the handwriting, right? So we are who we are, and yet there are things that are going to be, the core might be the same, but there are differences in how we express ourselves. So the next section is from Alan Liu, and the first two paragraphs I sort of talked about already, how he uses the paradigm really of going from Tisha B'Av through Sukkot. And this is from, unfortunately, he died rather young, but this is an NPR interview from 2003 So it's starting the third paragraph. The point of the high holidays is atonement. Let me see how far this goes. We might read through the whole thing, we'll see, because sometimes I feel like I don't necessarily need to comment on it. It's better, you know, like I can't say it any better than he's saying it, that's for sure. So somebody is there somebody who'd like to read? And this is a long one, so if you want to stop and somebody else can take over. From the point of the high holidays is atonement.
Here, I can read.
Okay.
Can you all hear me adequately?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. 2003 NPR interview. The point of the high holidays is atonement, reconciliation, and a restitution to wholeness. So it makes sense that a journey that ends that way should begin with an acknowledgement of alienation and estrangement. And that is the theme of Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the time when the temple was destroyed, and the temple was the place where one felt the palpable presence of God. After acknowledging that we are in fact estranged from ourselves, from others, from God, for the next 30 days, there is a very rigorous period of introspection. The essential gesture of this entire period is to become more mindful, to become more aware both situations psychologically and spiritually, or those things that we have been doing that aren't so productive. So the closer we are to being in the present moment, the more mindful we are, the closer we are to God. God is here. If we are elsewhere, we are estranged from God. So the blowing of the shofar is connected to this mindfulness, this process of becoming mindful. It calls us to it. It wakes us up, literally. It's an alarm clock. When we are really immersed in the act of prayer, we are not so much asking for things, and we are not so much trying to bend God's will to our own, which I think is what we ordinarily think of prayer, but we are really engaging in an act of self-judgment. Part of the reason that we are able to effect a reconciliation with God during this season is because we realize how desperately we need God. We realize we can't do all these really difficult things without a sense of a transcendent consciousness beyond our own. I'm happy to continue, but if someone would like to read.
Anyone else?
Anybody else want to continue?
We are here.
Okay. Rosh Hashanah is the day when the gates to heaven open, and it's a very rich symbol, suggesting both access to the presence of God during this time, extraordinary access, suggesting a time of transformation, that if we read the book of our life, we can see ourselves and we can stop jumping into fires that we are wont to do and stop doing unconscious hurt to others. Oh my God, I need that one. Okay, on Yom Kippur, the very end of this process is a time when we literally rehearse our own death, and we intone this endless liturgy of who will live and who will die, and we abstain from all activities that living people engage in, like eating and sexual activity. We can evoke the power of our death to show us our lives. The most intense times are those last several hours of Ne'ilah when the gates are closing. I can literally hear and feel those gates clanging shut. And then the shofar blows, and there's a tremendous feeling of lightness. We spend the rest of the year in a greater state of awareness.
Yeah.
All right.
I highly recommend his book, where he really delves into this even more. But thoughts, reactions?
He captures what I experience at Ne'ilah. Anybody
Mhm.
else?
Yeah, I feel the same. And at this point here of we are really engaging in self-judgment. It's before you can make a change, you have to stop and acknowledge a change needs to be made.
Right.
So the first step of this whole process is getting us to just stop and look,
Mhm.
and turn inward. And then that deadline comes up when the gates are closing. And
Right.
we, if you're me, scramble to do everything the last minute, which doesn't always work as well. Not that I'm gonna change, even though I'll try. It's that stop stop jumping into fires we are wont to do, and stop doing unconscious hurt to others. Like it's without the looking, you can't make the change. And without the change, you can't have that final result. Like you can't get there without the doing for anything.
And this idea of self-judgment, we have to remember that our tradition teaches that with judgment always has to be balanced with mercy and compassion.
Judging with kindness. Yeah.
Right. So it's not judgment in order to berate ourselves. You know, we have to be compassionate with ourselves at the same time. So acknowledging what we've done, acknowledging what needs to change, but also being compassionate and realizing that we can change and that we are good people when it comes down to it.
Maria was saying, to me, this seems like a way of defining the path to Heshbon HaNefesh.
Right. So Heshbon, an accounting of the soul, sort of putting, looking at putting things in the balance. And that's it is.
Daniela added, it's amazing how psychology and spirituality / religion can go together so well. I feel it when I write in my journal through which I communicate with God. It's also my self-reflection, self-judgment, and introspection.
Yeah.
It's the balanced look and not just the whip.
Right, exactly. And this idea that we're estranged from ourselves, from others, and from God, which are kind of all part of this. They're all one and the same and yet distinct. If we're estranged from one, it ultimately leads to estrangement from the others.
Can you be connected to God if you're estranged from yourself?
Right. And again, it's not telling you what to believe about God or what God is. It's just saying, that sense that there's some kind of either a transcendent being or transcendent presence or something beyond us, or the power that flows through us, whatever, the force of the universe, something greater than ourselves that we can connect with during this time. And this idea that even though it's not only about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the gates are opening and then they close. Although there is a tradition that the gates are never totally closed, right? We can always shimmy our way in, because we always have the ability to do teshuvah. We always have the ability to return, even if we don't. It's not like if we don't do it during these 10 days, we're lost. Right? Because because some people take longer.
Doing this in January will get you this. Still has benefit,
Right.
If we can't do it then, it's still worth doing.
Yeah.
Or if you do it a day late.
I wanted to at least briefly look at let's see, about 20 minutes. Okay. Right beneath that, which says 5 ways to change our lives during this coming year. This is from the Babylonian Talmud. We can give tzedakah, charity, tzedakah, which is crying out, changing one's name, Shinui Hashem, which is traditionally actually what's done when somebody is ill, because we think we're going to fool the angel of death, but that's a whole other. But you'll see that means something a little bit different here. And changing one's conduct, Shinui Maseh. And some say changing one's place, Shinui Makom. And, we all know that sometimes we need to change our ways. And sometimes, I'm thinking of people who are addicted. They're told, you need to separate yourself from the people and places and things that were connected to that addiction, right? And sometimes that means breaking yourself away from people whom you love. But
boundaries are good.
Yeah. So somebody want to read the first one, number 1, tzedakah?
Sorry about that. Scroll there. If I've chosen tzedakah, I can use my talents and resources to create more justice in the world. What will I do this week that can make an immediate difference?
Okay, so remembering that tzedakah is not just charity, right? It's comes from the root tzedek, which is justice or righteousness. You know, there are many ways to do tzedakah, and you know, charity comes from the word caritas, which means it comes from the heart, and you know, you have to feel moved in order to do it. Whereas charity, tzedakah is like, no, you have to do it, even if you don't feel like doing it. But what can we do, whether it's financial resources, talents, etc., to make the world a better place? And again, what can I do this week? So that's one thing that we can do. And again, these are things not just to think about now, but these are things we can think about on a regular basis. Sa'akat, call out, to cry out. Who would like to read that one? Number 2.
I can do it.
Okay.
If I have chosen se'akah, I can cry out about all that's unfair, but there are other equally effective ways: letters, petitions, social action, tears, even prayer. How will I strategize to increase the possibility that my most pressing cry is heard?
Think of that in terms of what's happening in our world right now, right?
Don't just fetch, do.
Yeah. I can't remember who is it who says we're not human beings, we're human doings.
That's good.
All right, so Shinui Hashem, to change your name. Not something we would think of, but who would like to read that one?
I will. If
Okay.
I've chosen Shinui Hashem, I may want to alter some aspect of my identity. In what ways can I expand beyond the way others define my professional title? Doctor, chairperson, lawyer, CEO, or relational title, colleague, friend, parent, child, to include my own personal dreams and aspirations.
Okay, so yeah, it can literally be changing one's name. But it's also about, like I said, how do we alter our identity and go beyond the names we give ourselves or other people have given us.
It's like redefining your self-definition.
Right. So it's not only the names that other people give us, but our own personal dreams and aspirations. Any thoughts on that? Okay. Shinui Ma'aseh would like to read that one. I think it goes, no, it doesn't. Yeah, it does go on to the next.
Scrolls back,
Yeah, it
yeah.
kind of scrolls back. Yeah.
If I've chosen Shinui Ma'aseh, I may want to break some old familiar patterns of behavior, such as the way I relate to my family or colleagues. If I decide to establish a new pattern, at home, at work, or in the community, how could I increase the possibility that becomes habitual? 21 days.
Mm-hmm.
Repeating.
And this is really, all of these are, like I said, all of these are things we can do every day. But sometimes that's the hardest one. Like, we have to think about, what are we changing about how we act? And is it just going to be a one-day change? Or is it going to be, and doing it one day at a time? And remembering, okay, so I do it today and I didn't do it today. Okay, I can go back to doing it, right? It's not like once you do it, you have to start all over again. Or once you don't do it, you have to start all over
Still
again.
worth flossing, even if you do it once.
Yes.
See you, Joey. Joey's gonna
See you,
run.
Joey. Okay. I'll read this one. So if I've chosen Shinui Makom, the changing of one's place, this doesn't mean I must literally leave where I am, though it could. What adjusts in the place I live and work, such as a photo on a desk, a mezuzah on a doorpost, an open door, an adopted kitten, a ramp, that could change my feelings, purpose, and possibilities. Or that could change my feelings, purpose, and possibilities in the place I'm in. So that idea of changing the place or changing how we experience the place or what's in that place, so that it's not just, you know, the place, it's not just the place in which we live, but it's our home, or it's, even if it's the place we work, how do I make it more my own?
Or more nurturing.
More nurturing.
Or something to feed you better, like whether you go create yourself a reading nook. Or,
Right.
build an office to do work from. Or,
Exactly.
Mm.
So these are all, you know, these are 5 different ways that are mentioned in the Talmud, and then these are, I'm not sure where this particular interpretation comes from. I didn't put the source, so apologize for that, the interpretation of each one. But it's good to look at these things again as we're preparing for, as we're in Elul, if we're journaling, or if we're meditating. And you know, it can also be sometimes overwhelming to think of doing all 5 every day. We don't need to do that. You know, we can do 1 a day, maybe 2 one of them we can do twice, and then Shabbat give ourselves a break. Which doesn't mean all of a sudden we negate everything that we did, right. But you know, it's something that we could do in some way, shape, or form every day. Let's see. So I want to sort of go over a little bit. And Liz will share that. Well, you all have the link to this. You could.
It'll be in the follow-up email as well with the link to the recording.
So Psalm 27, which begins, "The Lord is my light and my help, whom should I fear?" Is the psalm that we say every day from the beginning of Elul through the end of Sukkot. And it really is about reminding us that, you know, that God is with us, and however we experience that, there's some greater power that is helping to guide us, that we're not alone. All these different images, but if we're not going to go through the whole psalm right now, but the thing I love is if you go almost down to the end, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line from the bottom of the psalm.
Yeah.
Had I not the assurance that I would enjoy the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, ellipse, ... The verse is never completed.
So much longer than I thought it was. Hearing this, I'm sorry.
So, but what does that mean? Say, had I not the assurance that I would enjoy the goodness of the eternal in the land of the living. How do we experience, or how would we end that verse? Maybe
I would not have been brave enough.
I wouldn't be brave enough to try. Okay. I don't know what I'd do. That's how I might end it. But I always find it fascinating that verse is left. It leaves you hanging. And there are translations. I can't remember what I've seen. Some translations. I think the King James that does that translates it in a way where there is there is a closure to the verse, but you know, I love the fact that it reminds us that there's, what would life be like if we didn't know that there is something, some greater source of goodness that's beyond us, that we can connect to, that can help us through this process. And then it ends with, "Look to the eternal, be strong and of good courage. Oh, look to the eternal." That can be through meditation, that can be through prayer, that can be through spiritual practice. And, you know, I love, you know, my idea of God, and I later found out that Rabbi Ira Eisenstein of blessed memory, who was the founder of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, used a very similar imagery. Like, I personally don't believe in a supernatural God that will say, okay, if we pray to God, God will make this happen, because otherwise, what about all the things that don't happen? Some people will say, and this fits into this whole process, you know what? I do believe that God does things, and I don't know why God isn't doing something here, but it's all part of God's plan. That doesn't work for me. This is just for me. So for me, I like the idea of God as sort of being like the force of the universe.
The ribbon of connection.
That it's like, you know, the analogy I always like to give is like, if we have a beautiful house with it's hooked up to the electrical current, and you have this beautiful lamp that if it's not plugged into the electrical current, it's just sitting there, right? So if we don't somehow plug ourselves into that divine energy in the world, and for those who don't believe in God, I still think there's some kind of energy in the world that we can plug ourselves into. I just prefer to call it God. If we don't plug ourselves into that, it's hard to do any of this.
Judaism has a purpose.
Right.
By being part of it, we have that goal of a better world to come that we're obligated to take our part in.
Right.
So it's like you're handed a task, you don't know what it is, but it's on you to get it done in some fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So having the assurance that I would enjoy the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, that someday that world will be here because I did X.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's just keeping my own soul happy and intact, or volunteering, or creating a giant project that changes the world. You know, it's whatever my part is, it's still required.
Right. Exactly.
And so this assurance of that's that final goal of the interconnectedness of everything and this beautiful world that's, done in the future. But
we don't know what that's going to be, It's just like when if somebody has a child, like we think all of these things and we have all these wishes for what that child is going to be. And hopefully in many cases, the only thing that they are that we had dreamt of when they were born is that they're good people. Like as long as my kids are good people, how they manifest that in the world, each of them is going to do it differently, no matter how I imagine they might have done it. And I think in some ways it's true for us. I mean, we don't know what our future is going to. Granted, we're starting with the base already, but we may be through this process a very different person when we come out on the other end.
We started there and now we're here.
Yeah. So Liz can send you the document with Elul meditations, because we aren't gonna have time to get into that. But these are different. It's just from Congregation Beth Yeshurun in Houston. Some different ideas for meditations you can use, practices you can use during Elul. But I just want to share one quote. Well, two things I'll share. One is from Rabbi Lily Tomlin, which I love this. I always wondered why somebody doesn't do something about that. Then I realized I was somebody. We can't wait around for somebody else. I'm the somebody. We're each the somebody that can do something about whatever that is. But what I will end with, I want to end with this prayer. So before I do that, are there any other thoughts, any other questions, anything that you want to bring up before we close? Well, I hope this gives you a sense of sort of what the spiritual part of this. And one thing I would, you might want to print some of this up or all of this up or whatever. And I'm a firm believer of supplements, not vitamins, though I believe in them too, but liturgical supplements, and they don't need to be read out loud, because I have mixed feelings about congregational readings and responsive readings and things like that. I feel sometimes it stops the process for me. It's like I'd rather, even if I'm not following the prayers directly or don't know what's happening at the moment, I feel like there's a flow and I'm in that, and then all of a sudden it's like, let's stop and read English. But I also realize that's me. So I think there's a balance, but I always urge people, you may very well have a machzor or a prayer book for the high holidays that, like we do. Actually, all of the major movements now have lots of commentaries and poems and things like that. So you can go off on your own. You don't have to, if whatever's happening isn't speaking to you at that moment. But also bring your own prayers or readings that might help you if you want to, especially on Yom Kippur when you're there all day. Maybe you want to look at something else that's not in the siddur, not in the machzor. So these are just some resources, the ones we just went through, but also these little meditations. But I want to end with a prayer by Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. It's on the Elul Meditations on page 4.
What is the title?
A Fresh Start.
Really? Got it.
So Reb Nachman of Bratslav, the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov who founded Hasidism, is a fascinating character, was a fascinating person. He struggled with depression through his whole life, and he's very open about that. And he was the one who developed Hitbodedut, that meditation where you go out into the fields and you talk out loud. And he believed that everything was connected to the point where our prayers in the fields could affect the plants and the grasses, and everything is connected. And for somebody who was often in the depths of depression, he found his connection to the divine and the world as a way to come out of that. And he carried the Breslavers who continue his tradition are his spiritual children, because he never had any children. So if you go to a Breslov synagogue, there's an empty chair up front, and that represents Reb Nachman. But that we're all somehow the spiritual children of those who came before us. So I just want to end with this. I just wanted to give that a little introduction about him. But I wanted to end with this prayer. Dear God, teach me to begin anew, to renew myself along with all of creation, just as you renew the entire world each day. Show me how I can break free of the constraints of my habits, the restraints of my insecurities, the shackles of my unwarranted fears. Teach me, dear God, to make a fresh start, to break yesterday's patterns, to stop telling myself I can't when I can. I'm not when I am. I'm stuck when I'm eminently free. So thank you everybody for joining us.
Daniela wrote, she just wanted to say thank you because you wrote so many wise thoughts you mentioned today into her diary, and thank you for the spiritual wisdom.
Thank you for sharing and for allowing me to teach, and for just being here today from all over the country and overseas, which is great.
Yes.
This was very wonderful. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
You're welcome, Tim.
And I'm Haskalah. Hi, Liz. It was just superb. And it may be Elul already, but today, now, this minute, I feel like I'm entering the days of awe. So thank you. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for sharing that.
Rebecca says thank you. Maria says thank you. Lovely time to reflect and engage. And so there'll be a follow-up email with the links to the docs if you didn't get to download them, and reference to any books, and a link to the recording. So you'll see that in a day or two from me.
All right. Take care, everyone.